morning. It's Saturday morning and I'm Lynn Pierce. We're live here at the Office Restaurant in Cabo San Lucas on Madonna Beach. I'm gonna see my little light is working. Wow, that's really bright. Let's see. Since it's a little cloudy today, I thought I'd sit on the other side of the table. Give you a little bit different view. Now I'm falling into the holes here on the table. Okay. This morning, we're going to be talking about what it's like to be an expat. I know a lot of people have thought about being an expat, or at least maybe entertained the idea a little bit. It seems like now that a lot of people, especially with more flexibility in their jobs, have the opportunity to move and work remotely, which makes it even easier to live in a foreign country that may not have been an option for you before, and now it is. So a lot of people exploring this topic that maybe wouldn't have otherwise, that maybe thought, well, you know, when you're over 65 or 70, then you go and live in some slow-moving country for the rest of your years and live off Social Security or something. But that's not at all what it's like being an expat anymore. And just to clarify, an expat means that you're living permanently in a country other than the country that you're from. Doesn't necessarily mean that you're living in a third world country, although right now Mexico, Costa Rica, Nicaragua, Panama, Ecuador are some of the most popular countries that people are moving to as expats. So today we're going to talk about being an expat, well, really within the standpoint of the vision that you're creating for your life. And so it may be something that you're looking at doing quickly. It may be something that you're looking at doing a little bit further down the road. But even if it is something further down the road, you still want it to be part of that vision that you're creating, so you can start taking the action steps towards that. So we're going to be talking about, I wrote down a bunch of topics here. We're going to be talking about, I have to stretch my arm all the way out to see this. Things to consider, criteria for picking a place that would include weather, safety, cost of living, food, in terms of how easy it is for you to get the things that are required for your diet, whether you're vegan, you eat organic, have some other type of special needs, gluten-free or something like that. You need to know that you can get your food. Why it's important to rent rather than buy right off the bat. Healthcare, language, ease of transportation, goods and services availability, proximity to the U.S. or whatever your country of origin is. Equality, can't read my own writing. Quality of housing. Some people think it's important to have housing that's up to U.S. standards. Some people don't. Culture, if that's something that you're interested in. Sports activities important to you, or other activities. And then if we have time, I'll talk to you about why I moved to Cabo. But the thing is, it's really important that you have a clear vision of what the lifestyle is that you want to create when you move to another country. Because if you aren't really clear and you go into it with what I call vacation mentality, maybe it's your favorite vacation spot you've been traveling to, maybe it's someplace you've only vacationed a couple times, but you look at it as a vacationer. Life is very different than vacation. And so when you have that vacation mentality, people end up making some very costly mistakes. So it's really important to consider all these criteria. So let's start with weather. Everyone's idea of perfect weather is probably different. My temperature range of what I consider maybe what you consider perfection. When I lived on the beach north of San Diego, it took me quite a while to get used to the weather there because I was freezing all the time. People consider that perfect weather. For me, it was too cold. I'm used to warmer temperatures. I lived for like 10 years in the South, where in the summer it would be 95 degrees and 95% humidity, and you'd walk outside your door, you'd be soaking wet, and you couldn't even breathe. And sometimes it would be that way until 10 o'clock at night. And I loved where I was living, so I dealt with a less than optimal weather situation for me. For me, where I am now in Cabo is perfect. I do not mind the couple months in the summer or early fall where it gets hotter and it's more humid, because that's the time of year, September, October, a little bit in August, where we might actually have a storm. It would be nice to have some more weather. We get very excited when there's days like this where it's kind of gray and cloudy because it rarely happens. This is an unusual place for weather because it's one of the few places in the world where mountains and desert come right down to the ocean, so we don't have the humidity. Our weather is not like the mainland of Mexico at all. So it's important to know what you like. Do you like it in the 70s? Do you like a lot of variety of weather? Do you want to see more rain? Do you want more of a range of temperatures? Do you want it to be in the 80s? Do you want to have warm water year-round that you can go into? Here, I won't go into the water until somewhere around July 4th, and that goes until around Thanksgiving. Some people will go in year-round, obviously the tourists do, but I also have my water temperature range. So there's always give and take. Like here, I love the weather, I love the lifestyle. I would prefer to have the water of a Caribbean island here where it's warm all the time. So you have to decide what are the most important criteria for you. And even in this area, there are so many microclimates that where it's windier, there are places that always seem to be hotter. There's places that there's more chance of rain during the year. So it takes some time to look at all the individual areas and see what is the perfect fit for you. So the next thing is safety. Is it important to you to live in a native area and have security? You can't always judge an area or a country by the government issued warnings. There's a lot of political reasons behind those. Also, news stories are sensationalized, and something that goes on in a very generalized area can be reported to have happened in a major tourist area even though it didn't. And it scares people away. So it's important to go beyond what you read in the news or on government websites and get into whether it's Facebook groups or wherever you can connect with people that actually live in the areas that you're considering. All of the places that I just mentioned. Hi, Dr. K. Nice to have you this morning. And all of the places I just mentioned are pretty safe. There might be areas in each of those countries that are less desirable. But the reason that a lot of expats are moving to those places is because they're comfortable there. So the other thing is everyone's level of safety is different. When you look at the things you deal with if you live in a major city in the United States, I don't know if any of those places that I just listed are more dangerous than where you already live. I have never lived anywhere that I feel as safe as I feel living here in Cabo, and certainly things have changed over the last 25 years since I moved here in '91. But still, I can't think of anywhere that I would be safer than right here. And so it's important to look at what your requirements are as far as safety level, what you're looking for. The next thing we talked about is cost of living. Wow, cost of living is so individualized because some people, when they decide to become expats, they want to go native, so to speak. They want to live in the culture of the community that they're moving to. They want to be a part of that. They don't want to be isolated in some expat community. They want to feel like they're part of another culture. So you can find things, for example, here in Cabo, if you want to be in town, back in town with no view, just a small apartment, you can find something for a couple $100 a month that would allow you to be here and enjoy everything the area has to offer. But that might not be the standard of living that the majority of people would be interested in. But you can find every range of accommodations that you would want. Some of them are, I would say probably the majority of them, are less expensive than what you would find for comparable ocean view or oceanfront properties in the U.S. Certainly cheaper than in Hawaii or anything like that. That's part of why people are becoming expats. They're moving to countries where their money goes further. And part of that is the cost of housing. Some people can sell a home in the U.S. or Canada or wherever they're coming from and pay cash for something down here and no longer have a mortgage. And then whether they're living on Social Security or they're still working and enjoying a laptop lifestyle, it allows them any kind of lifestyle they choose then. For people that are renting, which I would recommend for at least 2 years, then you can choose different experiences. The big thing is even things like utilities, for example, here. It depends on the orientation and how much sun you're. Okay. Looks like I went off for a second. I'm back, I guess. I'm guessing that maybe I forgot to disconnect the Wi-Fi and go on data before I started this, so hopefully we're going to be okay. That's another thing. Internet is very iffy here. You just never know. But, so what we're talking about, utility costs. So where I live in a place where I'm very lucky with my orientation. I'm angled just right so that I not only have an amazing view, but just enough to the east that I don't have sun beating in all day. Where one of my neighbors who lives in the exact same floor plan that I do, just awful electric bills because they're just slanted a little bit more to the south. So little things make a difference besides what your comfort level is as far as temperature. So you can't really go by just asking someone what are the utility rates there. It would be what are the utility rates for somebody that lives in this much space that has this exposure and likes it at 75 degrees all summer long. Well, that would be probably 10 times what I pay. So there's a lot of little factors to consider in each category. When we're talking about food, I think all of these countries that are attracting expats have a certain amount of American goods and services that are available either in your town if you choose to live somewhere that that is a larger city, or if you're living in a small town, someplace that you can drive to and order what you would like. Order. The waiter just showed up, so I've got ordering on the brain. So you can get the food that you want to get. And here, for example, there's more organic markets all the time. For the last 3 or 4 years now, you've been able to get at least 6 months a year boxes of organic vegetables delivered to your house at a very reasonable price. So it's getting easier and easier. Now we also have a grocery store here that all the time is having more and more organic produce, more and more organic foods and specialty foods brought in. So it's getting easier all the time, and I think that's true in other countries. You've got to remember that these are countries that are welcoming the expats in. So make it easier to live in places like this. I'm sorry that we keep getting interrupted here by the internet. I can't believe that I forgot to check it. The other thing, why rent? Too often people come down, they go around with a realtor, they check things out, they find a place that they love, it has a great view, the neighborhood seems nice, and so they buy it. And then they don't find out until later what the horrible issues are with the HOA, which gated communities all have, or they find out that it's a very loud environment at night, or the traffic nearby is really loud in the morning, or in the middle of the night you can hear music coming from somewhere else that keeps you awake. All the kind of things that you don't know until you live somewhere. Here, for example, it's possible to rent for a few months at a time. Yes, you will pay more. It'll save you a lot of grief in the end. Or a 6-month lease, or if you want a 1-year lease. I love moving, so I've lived a ton of different places here. And they all have their individual quirks. And so renting is just a smart thing to do, to live a couple different places and see what works best for you. What was the next thing on our list? Oh, healthcare. Healthcare. I apologize. Again, healthcare. There are countries that have programs where you can get government health for $100 a month per person. Those things are easily researched online, and I know healthcare is much less expensive than is in countries. That's also true in the other popular expat countries. So there's good quality healthcare, and it's very inexpensive compared to being in the U.S. Language, I know here in Cabo, I speak less Spanish now than I did in the 90s because more and more people need to speak English for their jobs. So even though Spanish is their first language, they're learning to speak English. And they want to practice, and it's important for them to practice. So I find myself not speaking Spanish much anymore, and so from not using it, it's going away. So that's something for you. Do you want to live in a community where you're going to be learning a second language, or do you want to live in a community where you can continue speaking English? That's another thing for you to consider. Ease of transport. Are you going to have a whole household moved when you come down here, or are you going to sell everything and just ship personal belongings? A lot of people just sell everything and come with the suitcases they're allowed by their airline. And that's it. They completely start over when they get to their new destination. So that's another thing to consider, because for each country there's different rules about what you're allowed to import, how you import that you're going to have taxes, all things to consider. Services. It was like being a pioneer when I was here in 91. There was very little here as far as goods and services shopping. In the summer, we drove 2 hours from here with the cooler. Stayed overnight in a nice hotel, and then the next day went and filled our coolers with groceries and came back and had chest freezer that we put everything in, because there was so little food brought down here in the summer because there just wasn't many people here, so it didn't make sense to drive a truck 1,000 miles down the Baja Peninsula or bring by ferry 17 hours. Okay. I really apologize. I don't know what this looks like on your end if I just click off and then come back real quick now that this is happening more often. Proximity to the U.S. If you plan on going back and forth, you want to be somewhere that's a reasonable distance in your terms for you to fly back and forth. How long is the flight? How far are you from the airport? We already talked a little bit about quality of housing. All of the areas that are popular now with expats are building developments that are built to U.S. standards. So it is possible for you to go places and have that. The other thing is, some people are into culture, some people aren't. Some people have certain activities that are a part of their everyday life. You want to make sure that whatever location you're looking at, that you check ahead of time, make sure all those things are available to you. The one last thing that I wanted to say, and I wrote this down so that I would remember, just the way people would describe your hometown through their lens of how they live their life. You'll find the same thing in every expat area that you look at. And I see this all the time where someone will ask a question. They'll ask a question about, I'm looking for, this kind of experience. Where's the best place? Even tourists looking for restaurants. Where's the best Italian restaurants? And you'll get 20 different restaurants recommended as the best restaurant. So just remember that everybody's looking at life through their particular lens. There isn't just one answer to even the simplest question. You not only want to do a lot of investigating online, but you want to talk to people that actually live where you're thinking about going. And look at its Facebook profile. Find people who have a similar outlook on life to you, that have similar values to you, that have similar interests to you, that have the same lifestyle intentions that you have, and if you can, income range that they're living on in that area, and then connect with those people and get the in-depth scoop on exactly what it's like. Because it really doesn't do you any good to talk to someone that lives a completely different lifestyle or has completely different things that are important to them. And that goes back to why it's so important for you to create a vision for your life and be very clear on who you are, what's important to you, what you want your life to look like, what are the non-negotiable